How do you assess if a brand should invest in SEO?
That puts us at the top of Google right away. When I was putting the book together, like the first win with SEO is not ranking for Northern Wisconsin cabin rentals. That's actually the last win you have with SEO typically. The first win is like ranking for, so you can be that content media company for your area. Then when I go and make a page like the best cabins on Lake Superior, I'm going to have a much better chance of ranking for it. And that's what Airbnb and Vrbo and the large OTAs don't do. They don't go and create articles on a destination and say, here's the best restaurants, here's the best things to do, here's the best boat launches in this area. They're not a content media company. They're an OTA. They're a listing company.
I think Google and that guest who is kind of new to the area both see your website in the same way, which is weird to say because Google's a machine.
Obviously, there may be a ramp up period for your SEO efforts where you're really not getting much traffic and you're investing time, effort, energy, content creation, budget, that kind of thing. But if we want to get as much search traffic as possible, we've got to leverage.
Really quick, this was an amazing episode with Conrad O'Connell. It's truly an SEO masterclass for vacation rentals. In this episode, we talk about how to assess if SEO is actually a good avenue to invest in. Then we walk through his SEO process that he uses in his agency for many clients in the vacation rental space. And then finally, he gives away a tip on how to maximize search marketing so that you can get the most out of your investment. If you want to learn more about Conrad, you can go to buildupbookings.com. He's got books, courses, and obviously marketing services if you want to work with him and his team. All right, that's enough for me. I hope you enjoy this episode. How do you assess if a brand should invest in SEO and if that's a good avenue to invest in?
Right. Well, I think so. We've created this framework a little while ago called TLCK. So it's technical, link building, keyword research, content creation. And I think the keyword research part of that would answer a lot of those questions if someone was looking to invest in SEO, but they weren't sure if there was an ROI there. Because you could go into like these keyword research tools, like Ahrefs is one that we use, and you could see how many people are searching for a given topic, or they're searching for a given, search phrase or something like that in your market, and see how much opportunity is actually there. So I guess in that case, I think you can get a pretty data-driven answer because the data will tell you if people are searching for what you're offering from like a generic point of view, and if it's worth investing, time and effort into that. It's so funny. I talked about that recently with someone. If you're in a major US city, for example, or a European city, and like Airbnb Paris gets lots more searches than like Airbnb or Paris vacation rentals or Paris short-term rentals or Paris holiday rentals or something like that. So you can make an argument that like SEO is not going to be as valuable in a place like Paris. Even if you were to rank highly in Google, you're not going to get as much traffic as you would in like a US beach market, leisure market, where there might be 300,000 people every single month that search for Myrtle Beach vacation rentals or something like that. That market having more search demand. So I do think the data can guide you pretty well there. And I'd recommend people using a keyword research tool like Ahrefs or something to find some of that data.
Would you recommend just kind of having the business owner go through the keyword research process and kind of use their own intuition? Like if 200 people are searching for vacation rentals in northern Wisconsin or whatever the location is that even worth it to invest in SEO? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I think it's a valid question. I think when you're talking with really low search volumes, obviously there may be a ramp up period for your SEO efforts where you're really not getting much traffic and you're investing time, effort, energy, content creation, budget, that kind of thing. So in really low search volume markets, it's funny that I've had clients in the past like insist on doing SEO, and I'm like, we're probably better off just doing paid search because like that puts us at the top of Google right away. You know what I mean? We don't have to wait for like our links and our content to start activating and getting some benefit from Google organically. We can just like run ads. And if it's a low search volume market, your ad budget will be very modest. Like you might only need a few $100s to actually get some significant, traffic from search, at least relative to the amount of people searching. So I think it's a fair question to ask. I think there are markets where either just doesn't make a lot of sense or like the juice isn't worth the squeeze, if that makes any, logical sense. Like we're ranking well for a keyword that like no one's searching for. What's the point if it's not going to convert well? So I think in those markets where it's like relevant traffic, but the volume is low, I think paid search could be a great way to go because you get to the top of Google right away. Your budget will be very modest, but you can get all the benefits of search traffic, which does convert better than most other sources in our experience.
I want to pull that thread on the paid search. So if you were to go to, let's call it a well-established brand, would you advise that they invest in SEO and paid search, or would you prefer to put one over the other? Or how do you kind of think through that process of recommending paid search versus actually investing in SEO and getting that longevity?
Yeah, well, I think nowadays, obviously, if you look at the search results, like it's so obvious and clear that Google is going to continue to push, paid advertising in their top of their above the fold, if you will, on Google search. So I think it's really hard to say search traffic is valuable to my business. I will get additional guests or I'll get additional bookings, from these efforts, and then not consider running paid, because even if you rank number one organically, I have plenty of examples I could show you where we work with a client, they rank number one organically for like a non, brand search term, like area name vacation rentals, and they're still only getting, a fraction of the click-through rate that they would be getting if they weren't also running paid. So it's kind of like, do I wish that I had to do paid in some scenarios, especially when we're ranking well? I wish we didn't in some scenarios, to be honest with you. But if we want to get as much search traffic as possible, we've got to leverage both channels, right? Because despite what people will say things like, I don't click on search ads, or I don't click on any ads on Google. It's not true. The data obviously indicates that like anywhere from 25 to 45% of people who search on Google are going to the paid results and clicking. And even Airbnb, who famously in the past has said that they do very little performance marketing, they don't actually spend a lot of money on that kind of stuff. I mean, their Google Ads budget is still tens of millions of dollars every single month to run Google search ads. And this is a company that's brand first, that's, platform first, they still spend all this money to run Google search ads to get additional traffic in the door. So if you can learn anything from them, maybe it's that, which is that search traffic converts well. Getting more of it is a good thing for your business. Why wouldn't you want to be doing both SEO and paid search, as long as it's profitable and as long as you're seeing a good return on your investment?
And I would imagine, I think I know the answer to this question. Your approach to doing paid and SEO probably doesn't differ between a well-established brand, so somebody who's been around for a while, and somebody who's brand new, just opened, just trying to get on the market. I would imagine your approach probably doesn't change.
I think it depends a little bit. Obviously, people have different appetites, I would say, for their investment. And just because someone's been around for a while doesn't mean that they've built up like the profit margins in their business that they might need to. So you'd be surprised how often I've talked to someone who's like relatively large, like doing a good amount of bookings, specifically direct bookings, but they actually don't have much of a marketing budget. They've just never put that into their sort of, like their overall company budget. So they don't have the budget that you would think to actually promote and do advertising and marketing. Whereas sometimes we talk to people who are smaller and newer, but they've like thought about marketing from the beginning and they built it into their like the fundamentals of their company from like a business, standpoint. They're like, hey, we're going to spend X% of our revenue every year in marketing. How do I then deploy that budget to be the most impactful, the most successful? So yeah, I think you'd be surprised. Like sometimes those, the larger companies don't have the budgets you think. And then sometimes larger companies have massive budgets and you just don't know sometimes until you crack under the hood and see what's actually going on, beneath the surface, which is something I've always been surprised by in the past. It's why sometimes I ask very like open-ended questions to people when I'm talking to them for the first time. Tell me a little bit about your approach, to marketing. How do you budget things? How do you decide what to budget on? What's working best? How do you track these things? These are all valid questions. Because to go back to like your core question there, a new, maybe smaller property manager or host compared to a large established one, well, that initial client may need to like rank well initially for their brand name. It's something that I talk about at length when I was putting the book together. Like the first win with SEO is not ranking for Northern Wisconsin cabin rentals. That's actually the last win you have with SEO typically. The first win is like ranking for the example I was given. The podcast I do, Scott, is Conrad's Cool Cabins, which is this fictional cabin company that I don't have. But it's like, that's actually the first win, is like people searching and finding my fictional, cabin company name first, and then the names of each of my properties. That's my first SEO win and my first paid search win, is getting people to find me on that basis. Then we can discuss how we rank for other things after we get kind of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, established.
So what would be, like, there's a hierarchy of importance in my head on how I do SEO. Like for me, it's on-page SEO. And then I do local SEO, so try to, make sure my reviews are good and ask people for reviews. And then it's kind of the back end stuff. So it's link building and technical SEO. In order for somebody to, one, rank for their name, which I agree is super important. Like people are going to see you, maybe like a sign, or see you on the Chamber of Commerce, leave, come back, search for you directly. And if they can't find you, like there's a missed opportunity right there. But for people who do want to rank for kind of a more broader term, so something like cabins in northern Wisconsin or cabins with a view of Lake Superior, how would you kind of approach that task, kind of using like the hierarchy of importance? Would you start with on page, or what would you do?
Well, I think the first thing to start with, really, this sounds simple, but you'd be surprised how many people skip this one as well. I call this reading the SERP. So like doing that search in Google and looking at what kind of pages come up, I think is like actually the beginning part of that research. What kind of page is Google showing? And I probably need to make a page that's somewhat similar from like a layout perspective or from a content perspective in order to get my page to rank, right? So that's one thing I think, where people have like a single property. Let's say someone does a single property and they wanted to rank for a keyword like cabins with a view of Lake Superior, but you do a search on Google and every single page that's that's ranking, whether it's an OTA site or a local site, is a collection of cabins. Well, you can market and try to do the best on page in the world for that one property, but if Google's not wanting to show a page like that, or Google doesn't show a page like that, you might just be spending a lot of time going in the wrong direction on that. So I think maybe the first thing is like researching the actual search results and seeing what kind of page comes up. Then once I say, okay, I could make a page like these others that are on the search results, then I think it's very fair to dive into on page. You've got to build the page first, right? To like kind of put your hat in the ring, or put your name in the hat, if you will, to like get that potential search traffic coming in. And then from there, I think building the content on the page. We use an SEO tool called ClearScope. I don't know if you talked about that before, but that's kind of our approach to what do you put on the page is like a valid question. Obviously, other than the cabins themselves, what extra text, what type of information, what content do we put on the page? ClearScope is a great tool for that. And then I think you've kind of entered the race. I think the way you win the race by ranking that page highly in Google is typically through a lot of link building and content creation on the website that supports that other article, right? And again, a page like you're describing there, cabins with a view of Lake Superior, is probably the last page you rank in your website after you've done brand, company, brand, property level, right? That's kind of a second win. Content informational keywords, particularly low competition content information keywords, then I can typically see some success on that last pillar, cabins with a view of Lake Superior. I find it really challenging to rank that page first. In fact, it's basically impossible unless it's very, very low competition.
What's your approach to making content that supports that main landing page that you want to rank for? Do you take the blog approach that I know has been around for many years, or do you try to do a mix between like making more landing pages for specific searches with blogs, or what's your kind of like, how do you create that moat?
Yeah, I think it's both, to answer your question. I think you want to have blog and informational content that supports whatever you're supposedly an expert in. So if we go through this Lake Superior example for a few more minutes, it would be, I have an article on the best boat launches on Lake Superior. I've got an article on the best boat rental companies. I've got an article on the best restaurants. I've got an article on the best things to do. I've got an article on maybe the marinas. Like I build out a whole profile of content, and our content manager and our team does that now, but that's kind of the approach that we subscribe to. Then once basically in my mind, this is how I think about it, at least. I can't prove this in Google's documentation. This is just what I've experienced over the years. Google now sees me as an authority on Lake Superior, right? Because I've written now highly researched, comprehensive, useful articles about this topic. Then when I go and make a page like the best cabins on Lake Superior, I'm going to have a much, much, much better chance of ranking for it, especially if I'm not obviously the domain authority of Airbnb. I'm not the domain authority of Vrbo and stuff like that. So I've got to find something that they don't do. And that's what Airbnb and Vrbo and the large OTAs don't do. They don't go and create articles on a destination and say, here's the best restaurants, here's the best things to do, here's the best boat launches in this area. They just don't have the scale. That's not what their business is. They're not a content media company. They're an OTA. They're a listing company. So if you can be that content media company for your area, then those other pages start to rank a lot better in my experience. So I think it's starting with that element of how can I make stuff as useful as possible for as many people as possible visiting this area, and then those other pages just do better once you internally link them and once you kind of put them out there, because now you've got what Google likes to show, which is content information. They think you're an expert, or they believe you become an expert on this market. Then you've got links going to an asset like that, and you have a much, much better chance of success. And as with all things SEO, right, there's no magic bullet. There's no like, if I follow this step 1, step 2, step 3, it will guarantee success on step number 4. But that's just what we found the most success with over the years.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat too. I kind of do this. I coined it a little bit myself, where it's like the local guide approach, to where you have your main like hospitality website, like whether you're a hotel, whatever. The thing you're doing is you are giving some people a place to stay while they're up in the area experiencing stuff. But in some situations, you have people that go to an area and don't really know what's around there. And I think how people feel about seeing your website with a blog page, like a local guide, and like, here's things to do, bars to check out. Google also acts as that person, in my opinion, where Google will come to your website and it's like, well, I don't know this little town on Lake Superior. Like, why is this important? But if you show like, oh, there's this like boutique little restaurant, and then there's all these hiking trails, and you can actually like paddle to the islands, then I think Google and that guest who is kind of new to the area both see your website in the same way, which is weird to say because Google's a machine, but that's kind of how it is.
A machine who's trying to understand, I guess, what people are after, right? So like that's one thing I've noticed too over the years, is that ultimately Google, all they're trying to do is like mimic what people are looking for, and people are looking for information, when they're going and they're doing these kind of searches online. And Airbnb has all the listings in the world, of course. Like Airbnb has more listings than, any individual property manager will ever have, unless somehow you figured out a way to like get every single listing in a market. Not possible. If you figure that out, let me know. So in that scenario, it's like why would someone ever not click on the OTA result? It's because they know that there's not a satisfying amount of information on the OTA. There's a good amount of listings, and they may end up booking an OTA even. I grant you that. It's not a guarantee just because you get a visitor that visitor is going to convert into traffic, but it doesn't mean that it has everything that they're after, right? So like that's the one thing when you're the little master of your own domain or your little, area, you can actually make a lot of progress because you're not competing with as many people as you think. I think that's one thing people misunderstand is that, oh, everybody in my market's doing this. Like, not really. I mean, like we've had clients that we've worked with over the years who there was an old established, been around forever property manager, and they come up behind them, but kind of coasting, not really doing much marketing. We come up behind them and start putting out 2 blog posts a month. We start building links every single month. We start doing paid ads on our brand and their brand. If you want to be really, kind of like extra aggressive, we start really coming in aggressively marketing, and the market sentiment can shift pretty quickly, like quicker than maybe some legacy property managers think, because they don't realize maybe that they've been resting on their laurels and just kind of putting things in autopilot. So yeah, one thing I believe this to be true, at least from my experience, Google seems to reward the velocity of links and velocity of content a little bit. So when a site goes from like some level of activity to a lot of activity very quickly, and it's good content and it's good links, Google seems to like that a lot more than a site that's just kind of like, again, coasting and dropping in a new link here and there, dropping in a new piece of content here and there. And it can be frustrating when I'm on the other side of that and I'm working with a large company that's been around forever, and then some new company's coming up and ranking better than I feel like they should in the search results, because I'm like, we have more links, we have more content, we have a better brand. How is this possible? And it seems like, to me, this is just my opinion on it, Google seems to like the velocity of new brands coming in place, and they'll give them a shot in the search results. Again, not a guarantee they stick there, but usually I see that pretty commonly when I look at some of the markets we work with in, is like a new company that's kind of like ascending faster than you might think in the search results, because they seem to be focusing on things and working on things more aggressively.
Do you think doing like routine conversion rate optimization, whether it's every month or every quarter, do you think that helps the velocity? Like, do you think that pings Google, tells it, hey, we're keep trying to get better and better to give your searchers what they're looking for? And also conversion rate optimization is how you make more money for each click. Do you think that doing conversion rate optimization helps that velocity?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think most people trying to do conversion rate optimization or like any sort of A/B testing don't have enough traffic to really actually make meaningful progress in that respect. So they're running some kind of A/B test, or they're doing some kind of measurement, but they don't actually wait for enough traffic to come in, or more importantly, enough conversions to come in to really make solid improvements in that respect. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not for the like improving the UI, the UX of the website, right? Like we have a client recently where like the button was covered on mobile by like their chat widget, so you could tap it, but like 2/3 of it was covered. So I'm like, okay, I don't need to be in conversion rate optimization expert to realize like, let's not cover the call to action button on the search results page, right? So I think things like that are always worth improving. It just purely from like almost like a common sense conversion rate perspective. But I think that most people probably shouldn't be spending very much time on like A/B testing or like deep thoughts about conversion rate optimization unless they have enough traffic to really meaningfully measure the amount of people that they're getting in the door and change what they're doing to like see a better conversion rate. In other words, I guess to answer your question, most people are struggling with traffic, not the conversion rate of that traffic, generally speaking. If they had more traffic, their conversion problems wouldn't feel as bad because they have more people coming in who would then book, as long as it's of a what I call good enough zone. Like it's hard to match the engineering resources, the way that Airbnb works. It's very hard to mimic your checkout and make it work exactly like that, right? It's probably not possible for any single property host or property manager, but you can make like a good to very good experience for like a reasonable fee and then focus the rest of your time on traffic. That would be a more reasonable suggestion I would give people.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think before, conversion rate optimization is almost like a level 2 marketing thing. Like I think before you get into any of that stuff, you have to like do the basics, iterate a little bit, like find what kind of keywords work well for you. Make sure that the audiences that you're going after, they're actually clicking to your website. Like there's a bunch of foundational stuff that you have to do before you can, I guess, really even dive into conversion rate optimization. Conrad,
so, yeah.
Thank you for doing probably the best damn SEO podcast on the internet. Like I truly believe that. I had so much fun. Is there anywhere, like how do people get in touch with you? Where do you want to send people?
Well, I know you were joking before we hit record that I have too many things that I'm doing. So we put it all together on the website. Maybe if I could send people one place, that's probably a fair place to go. So if you go to buildupbookings.com, by the time you're listening, this probably our new website's out. So we've got a lot of new information and new resources available on that website, which has been a labor of love over the past few months to get that in place. So from there, you will see we've done a course last year. I wrote a book last year, so you'll be able to check out those resources. I think it's a great way if like you're just looking to educate yourself more, you want to learn more about what's going on. Those are two excellent resources. I think the book's actually the best source of information. information. If you're willing to kind of sit down and read it, I put like 10 plus years of knowledge basically into that book, and it's $15. So it's hard to beat that from like a cost to value perspective, but I'm very biased, I admit. And yeah, if someone's actually interested and they want to work with us, for sure, go to the website, tap the getting started button on the top right hand corner. We'd love to chat with you if it turns out that we can maybe help you and your business do these things for you.